Hello petals, my name is Anais. I am a womb witch, a Rahani energy teacher, and a plant alchemist. Under Unfurling Alchemy, I guide women in reconnecting with their power, awakening their essence, and step into sovereignty. In these episodes, I am going to approach topics around womb mysteries, energy healing, and cyclic living. Hello petals, today I want to talk to you about something that I feel women hear all the time, and that is you are too sensitive. You are too reactive. You feel things too deeply. You are just too much. And I want to tell you that there is no such thing as being too much. What may be happening here for you is that you may be under-resourced. And that is a very big difference. And understanding that difference changes everything. So being under-resourced means that you have a capacity, a sensitivity, a level of attunement that is real, that is valid, that is actually quite extraordinary. But you do not yet have the internal tools, the support systems, the practices to hold that capacity without it overwhelming you. It is not that you are feeling too much. It is that you have not yet been given what you need to carry what you feel. And that's a very different problem, and it has a very different solution. So I know this topic really intimately because I have lived it for years. My whole childhood, I believed that I was just too sensitive, that I was too emotional, too reactive to things that other people seemed to handle just fine. And I carried quite a lot of shame around that and quite a lot of overwhelm as well, because I really thought that there was something just wrong with me, that a wire was, crossed somewhere, or like I hadn't been built correctly, that something had broken inside me along the way, and that I just needed to learn how to be less feelings, less reactivity, less present to what was actually happening around me. Just less, really, altogether. And so I just want to tell you a little bit more about my own story, because I think this will help you understand where these kinds of sensitivity actually can come from. And I know that this has been the case for a lot of my clients as well. So I grew up, like a lot of us, in an environment where I had to constantly be aware, constantly be reading the room, constantly sensing what was happening beneath the surface. Not because I chose to, but because I had to. Because staying attuned to what was happening around me kept me safe-ish, keep me safe most of the time. So my nervous system, my beautiful, powerful nervous system, learned really early on that it needed to constantly be switched on, watchful, alert, and really picking up on those subtle shifts in the mood, in the energy, in the atmosphere, before they became something I needed to navigate. So it adapted. It became really finely tuned, and it developed what I like to call cat whiskers. So you know how a cat has whiskers that help it sense the environment, how those whiskers pick up those subtle changes within the air and the space around them and in what is approaching. That is what happened to my nervous system. I grew whiskers. Emotional, relational, energetical whiskers that were just constantly scanning my environment, constantly picking up on the mood in the room, the mood in the house, the unspoken tensions between people, the energy that someone was carrying even before they said a single word, the subtle shifts that told me something was about to kick off, something was about to change. And those whiskers, those powerful whiskers, they kept me safe. And they were not a flaw. They were an incredibly intelligent adaptation to the difficult, explosive, complicated environment I was living in. My system was doing exactly what it needed to do. But this is where it becomes a little bit more complicated, because alongside this heightened sensitivity, I was also being taught that I was being too much, that my emotions were being too big, that my reactions were too strong, that my sensitivity was an inconvenience. and that it was a problem, that I was the problem. And so at some point something shifted inside me, not consciously. I didn't sit down and were like, okay, let's address this, let's change this. No clear decision was made. But my system made a quiet choice. If being visible within my feelings is too much, then I will stop being visible, right? I will keep the feelings because I don't know how to turn them off, but I will keep it inside. I will contain them. I will contain it. I will hold it as much as I can within my internal landscape when nobody can see and nobody can tell me that I am too much. And so there was this shutdown that happened, at least from this outside. So everything was still happening on this inside landscape. The emotions were still there, the sensitivity was still there, the reactions were still there. But from the outside, nothing was visible. I looked calm, I looked fine, I looked like I had everything handled, everything perfectly. And I talk about this concept a little bit more in my episode called Are You a Cactus or Basil? So if you're interested in learning more about this, this is what the cactus archetype is, but I won't go into the details in this episode. So from the outside, I looked perfectly calm and put together, but the inside, the whole world was still happening. Storms, deep feelings, intense reaction, but it all was contained, all was held, all was invisible. And I want to name something here that I think is really important, and it is that those adaptations that we are exploring within ourselves, they are not weaknesses. They are not dysfunctional. They are incredibly intelligent adaptation. When you are told repeatedly that you are too sensitive, that your sensitivity is just too much, your system finds a way to protect you from that judgment. It finds a way to let you know how to be safe, how to keep feeling while being safe from the consequences of being seen feeling. And that is a beautiful, brilliant, powerful survival intelligence. But it does come at a cost. Because when everything is happening inside and nothing is being expressed or released or processed, you become exhausted, depleted. Your nervous system is working overtime trying to hold all of this together. And over time, you start to feel like maybe you are even more broken than what you were thinking before. Like something in you is just fundamentally wrong because you cannot seem to be able to handle what other people can handle in brackets so easily. But that is not what is actually happening. What is happening is that you have those beautiful, powerful, highly attuned whiskers. You are so emotionally attuned and so emotionally open. You are picking up on the things that other people are not even registering. But at the same time, you don't have yet the tools to manage that level of attunement. You do not know how to consciously work with your whiskers. You do not know how to, for example, turn them on and off. You don't have the level of grounding practices and energetical boundaries and support system that helps you to hold what you are sensing without it completely overwhelming you. And that is what being under-resourced actually means in practice. You have this sensitivity, which is an absolute superpower. You just don't know yet what to do with it, what you need to carry to be able to process this. So let me show you what this actually looks like in daily life. So you went into a coffee date with someone and you just went to the toilet for a second. And when you come back and you walk back into the room, you feel like this person is upset. They are not saying anything. Their face look completely neutral, but you can feel it. Something in the air has shifted. And because you don't have the framework for what you are picking up on, you start to spiral. You think you are making it up. You second guess yourself. You become so anxious trying to figure out
what actually is happening or what you did to upset this person. And maybe even try to figure out how you can fix it. And you end up absolutely exhausted and really destabilized by something that nobody else in the room is even noticing. But your whiskers are not wrong. You were sensing something real. The person was upset. Your nervous system picked up on something actually accurately. So the problem wasn't your sensitivity. The problem wasn't that you picked up on this. The problem was that you had no container for what you were sensing. You had no tools to process it. You had no language around it. No way to say, okay, yeah, I am picking up on something here, but wait a second, this does not belong to me, this is not mine, so I can just set it down. And I can choose to bring it up or not, but I have that sovereignty, I have that choice within how I am actually processing this. Or here is another example. So you are in a social setting, let's say, I don't know, you're going for a dinner, a gathering, a work event, and you come home absolutely completely drained, exhausted in a way that feels so disproportional to what was actually happening. While other people seemed energized or unaffected, and you feel like you need days to recover. And you just wonder what's wrong with you. Why can you not just enjoy things like everybody else does? Now, I just want to add a little disclaimer here that there may also be something here around your astrology, your energy centers, your human design that is making you more or less prone within the social settings. But bear with me here. Because what may have happened is that actually the whole time you were at this event, your whiskers were on. You were picking up on everyone's energy, everyone's mood, every subtle change, every little emotional undercurrent throughout the entire evening. Because you were then processing an enormous amount of information that most people around you were blissfully unaware of and absolutely not registering. So, of course, you're tired. You were working incredibly hard the whole time, just invisibly. So, the issue is not that you are too sensitive. The issue is that you did not have the tools to manage your own energy in that environment. You did not know how to turn those whiskers down, how to turn them off. You did not know how to create the energetical boundaries between what you were sensing and what you were absorbing within yourself. And so you were not resourced for this situation. And so I just really want to mention this here because it feels like so important that this is something that we are learning over time and that we have to process over time. And often when we are within that, when we grew up and we were told we were like too sensitive, we may have created a lot of those walls. We may have, gone really deep. Again, if I bring back the cactus, we may have gone really deep within the cactus archetype. We may have really shielded ourselves from it to a point where we may have even disconnected ourselves from the fact that this is our reality. So sometimes when we are deeply within this situation, we may not even know this about us. We may not even realize ourselves that actually we are still so sensitive, that everything is still happening, but it is happening within our internal landscape because we have separated ourselves so much from what is happening within our own field, within our own emotional field, that we are potentially not even aware that this is happening. And this is making it then even more complicated to understand why we are feeling so drained. So this is something that really I see in a lot of women that I work with, because also some of the most gifted healers and practitioners I know grew up with these whiskers, or they developed them over time as part of their practice. And so that level of sensitivity is absolutely not a flaw. This is what I want to reaffirm here. This isn't a flaw. This is an absolute superpower. This is one of the greatest gifts that you can have, because it really allows you to hold space for others, to sense unspoken words, to meet people in places that other people just may completely miss, right? But there is a difference between someone whose sensitivity serves them and someone whose sensitivity overwhelms them. And it is not like, the problem isn't the sensitivity itself. It is the resourcing. It is the toolkit they have to work consciously with what they sense, to know when to open and when to close, to know how to process what they pick up without carrying it, to know how to replenish themselves so that they are not constantly depleted. And that toolkit, like, nobody is born with it. A toolkit is something that we build. It is something that we gather over time. And that is what I want you to hear the most from this episode, is that you are not broken. You are not too much. You are not too sensitive. You may simply be under-resourced. And resources, they can be developed. So what does resourcing actually look like? It starts with grounding, practices that help your nervous system actually regulate and come back into your body when you have been picking up on everything around you. And this can be as simple as feeling your feet on the floor, stepping outside, putting your feet on the grass, putting your hands in the water, and spending time in nature. Your body needs to know where it ends and where everything else begins. It also includes boundaries. It also includes having people in your life that can actually hold space for you. And it includes learning to work with those whiskers intentionally. Recognize that you have them, understand what they are telling you, and choosing consciously when to lean into that sensitivity and when to give yourself permission to just rest from it. So it's not about becoming less sensitive. I want to really be clear about this. Your sensitivity is a gift. Your whiskers are extraordinary. The capacity to sense what others cannot is something that many people would love to have. But a gift without the tools to work it becomes a burden. And you deserve to experience your sensitivity as an actual gift. So the next time someone tells you that you are being too sensitive, or the next time you find yourself believing that about yourself, I just want you to pause. And I want you to ask a different question. Not what is wrong with me, but what do I need? What resources am I missing? What support would help me hold what I am feeling without it overwhelming me? Because you are not too sensitive. You are simply under-resourced. And this is something we can work with. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and I see you in the next one, my petals. Much love.